a professional in this industry. When I put this slide together, the slide said, know your role. And that was a little saying made famous by, for those of you who know me quite well, what type of sport that has nothing to do with real sport do I follow? Professional wrestling. Nick McKinnon would know that. And so who said know your role? The Rock. Now, and Dr. Stewart would know that as well. Dr. Stewart and I went to Memphis to the pyramid and saw The Rock just kick butt and take names. And Lisa Goatley, we didn't get home till 4 o'clock in the morning. She thought we were out carousing in Memphis. And I was like, no.
I know Barry and I know Mike. I knew they were not carousing in Memphis.
Okay. So I had a picture of The Rock with the people's eyebrows saying, know your role. And that was nixed from my talk. So we're now talking about what's your role. And what your role is that we always have to remember, whether we want to admit this or not, is that we are in a service industry. And when you hear people say service industry, do you think high and mighty thoughts?
Right.
No.
What do you usually think of when you think of a service industry? Restaurants.
Yes. Food service, exactly.
Food service, something like that.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. But that is us, and that's what we do. That is this business, what we're doing. We're serving others, and we shouldn't look at this as something bad, because the people that wait on us, especially here at the hotel, at a convention center, they have made it so easy for us if they do their job, same thing that we do. And I ask people, what do others expect of you when it comes to being served? So how would you answer that? Don't all speak at once.
Are they rude? We hope not. Yeah, right. They can
yeah,
be.
They can
That's
be.
when we have a bad customer service experience.
Yes.
Timely.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's right. They want your attention. So if we took a poll and I said, so from a fast food perspective, where is one place that you can go in this country and you're almost guaranteed to get a very positive, I'm so pleased that you're here response? You're just like the Wednesday crowd.
Yeah, everybody knows
Chick-fil-A.
that.
And it's ingrained in them, and it's almost sickening in terms of it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Everything is their pleasure. Okay? But you note that, and you pay attention to that, and that's ingrained. That's the way they want to be viewed. We're the same way. So they've just said, I want to be heard. You've got to be attentive. You've got to be cheerful, as tough as it is sometimes to put that smile on your face. You certainly have to be responsive, and we're going to dig deeper into this as a form of following through on professionalism. You need to be appreciative, okay? And return thanks, give thanks back to folks. You need to be grateful, and we're going to touch on that as well. And again, service industry, we are here to serve. That I may serve. Nick did in Virginia Tech's, Barry, all my Hokies in here. Isn't that what ut prosum means? That I may serve? You think, well, I should know that as long as I've been there, but it's something like that. So we're always looking for opportunities, and we want to meet and impress in that first opportunity that we have. Okay? And again, very important for what we do. As an industry, think about how we are perceived. To this day, when you tell somebody that my job is doing something with turf grasses, what does that mean to the general public? You mow grass. Okay. I am, to this day, I am you got a PhD in grass cutting. How does one do that? Okay. And that's still, for my family members, can't understand what it is that I do. Now, my kids do. She's got a little bit of an idea now of kind of what I do. And since I don't do it well, I bring her along with me. But you've got one opportunity to make that first impression that's there. And I stole this directly from her notes, which is when I realized this must not have been all me thinking this. So I'm going to let you speak about what you think is the critical part of the first and last 30 seconds, and how you handle this.
It's really important to make a good first impression. So you want to think about how you do that. You want to make good eye contact. If you're shaking hands, you want to extend a good handshake. You want to learn their name if you can. Use their name. In a conversation, try to find out something good about them. We only have one chance to make a good first impression. I think there's some research out there that says if you don't make a good first impression, it takes someone 7 other interactions with you to change their first impression of you, right? The first time they meet you, what they receive from you, the vibe that they get from you, or the behavior or the treatment that they get from you is who they think you are. Now, you might give a bad first impression because you're having a bad day. Well, that's who they think you are. And it's going to take you 7 other interactions with them for them to begin to change that and have a different impression of you. In a service industry, we don't always get people don't always give us 7 other chances, right? We don't always have 7 other chances to make a first impression on someone or to change their impression of us. So you have to make sure that your first impression is a good one. Even if you're having a bad day, you just have to fake it. You know, in my field, in the recovery field, like in AA, we borrowed a saying from them called fake it till you make it. And that just means put it on. Even if you're not feeling it on the inside, put it on. In psychology, we took that and we changed it and we call it the as if principle. Act as if you're feeling a particular way, and before long you will be feeling that way, right? How many of us have ever had a social engagement that we didn't really want to go to and we're like, ugh, I don't want to go to that party. I'm tired. I just don't want to do it. But you can't back out, so you go. So you put a smile on your face and you socialize with people and you're talking and laughing with them, and before long, guess what? You're having a good time, right?
You're faking it.
Well, you start out faking it, but then you make it, right? Before long, you're feeling that. In theater also borrowed it, and they call it the outside-in principle, right? So when someone is acting, they put on the mood, the role that they want to play on the outside, and all actors will tell you before long they're feeling that. So they call it the outside-in principle. So really focus on that first impression, rehearse an introduction if that's what you need to do, make good eye contact, use their name, find out something interesting about them.
That's exactly everything I was going to say. And then I boiled it all down to this. You only get one chance to make a first impression. What commercial made that famous? Head and Shoulders. Spoken by someone who has very little head above his shoulders. Yeah. So it was an extremely successful ad campaign, and it's absolutely right. You know, there's a commercial talking about managing dandruff. So it matters. Now, making an appearance. Obviously, I'm making an appearance. Correct? Good, bad? You have an opinion on how I'm dressed? I posed the co-presenter here, would it be okay if I wear this today? And she said, for what purpose are you wearing it? Because if it's to draw attention, it's the wrong purpose, and it does that naturally because of the bright colors. But the reason that I put it on is I'm not the only one at Virginia Tech that has a jacket like this, believe it or not. The entire turf team has a jacket like this, and they all have the logo here. And we'll talk a little bit about its teamwork. But the appearance, good or bad, y'all don't realize this is a $150 jacket. I only paid $18 for it, but it was originally $150. Okay, this is quality material, no matter what Sam Doak said. Put some, you know.
Yeah, I told him at the time when we found this, found this huge rack of orange jackets. He was like, "Those would be so awesome for the turf team. I wonder why they're all left." I said, "Well, take a look at them. That's why they're all left." Fortunately for us, they were. And so when they all go to conference, when the turf team from Virginia Tech goes to conference, and they all show up in their orange jackets, they look awesome, right? When you have just one showing up in the jacket, maybe not so awesome. You wonder, like, what was he thinking? But when
that's exactly the response that Ron Hostic gave me this morning.
What were you thinking?
Yeah.
What were you thinking, Mike? They look like a team, right? They look like a cohesive team.
Yeah, we look like something. So, dress for success, though, in this industry, to me, this is one of these slippery slopes. So, neither one of us is here to preach to you about how you should have dressed at conference, how you should do such and such. But we've decided that you should dress for the occasion. And as we've been getting some feedback from folks about what we did on Wednesday, it was kind of like, well, maybe we should be dressing for what's going to be my next purpose, my next step, my next spot at a facility or in life for what I'm trying to achieve. Anyone that's outside working that puts on an orange sport coat is certainly going to attract attention for the wrong reasons. But when you're trying to make an impression and you think about, I wonder if it really matters what I wear, what I look like, then that's where you need to really call a timeout and ponder, does it really matter what I think or what I look like?
I think the other piece is, in dressing for the occasion, right? Like, so many times you've got days that you work out in the field, right? You're not going to be wearing a shirt and a tie when you're working out in the field. But you can always be neat and tidy, right? And if you have work crews that are working for you, people that go out there representing who you are and you know what your organization is all about, you want them to look neat and tidy and cohesive. So we're going to talk about uniforms a little bit, and I'm going to use that term loosely. A uniform could just be a shirt with the same, you know, with your company logo on it. It could just be a button-up, you know, short-sleeve shirt with your company logo on it or something like that. There's something about that, about a team having, you know, a cohesive look to them that, you know, that helps people identify, you know, this is who they are. We look more professional, even if, you know, someone's mowing grass, they all arrive in the same, you know, the same shirts and the same, you know, the same type of look. If you go to Target, what's everybody wearing? What color is everybody wearing? Red. That's the Target color.
Sure. Well, as you walked around trade show, every firm was typically in their firm's colors. And again, it's to be represented. Now, if you have someone misrepresenting you, what's the worst thing that can happen? Is, wow. They know
exactly who you are because it's all right there. Or it's the same thing in like your company vehicles where you're, you know, where it's stamped on the outside. If you have someone who's not representing your company well, you know, if they're a bad driver, cutting people off, parking where they shouldn't park, it's very visible to everyone.
Yeah. Dr. Stewart knows Pink Harry Collins from North Mississippi quite well. Harry's a friend of mine, and Harry's lawn service company has bright pink trucks. And that's where the name Pink Harry comes from. It is the most eye-catching lawn
Very
service
visible.
company in Tupelo, Mississippi. But his fear is, and his quest is recognition, but his fear is recognition for the wrong reasons. So it is a two-way street that requires that. But again, we do want you to think about it is important as being part of a team to be recognized as being part of a team.
We had so many people come up to us after we did this the first time when we were at the social later that night. A bunch of guys saying, you know, like I went to my higher ups and I said to them, our guys need shirts. Our guys need to have matching shirts. And, you know, when they said yes and everybody got matching shirts, they were all told, like, here's your shirt. We're providing you with a shirt. This is our shirt. It's your job to take care of it. And several people said you'd be surprised at how much pride people took in that and how it made them a more cohesive team and really helped everybody to feel more like a team and, you know, elevated people's behavior a little bit.
And the other part about that shirt was when I asked more about what they had in mind is, now this just wasn't a $3 Fruit of the Loom. The boss told me that we actually went and we invested in some nice Carhartt type. And so the expectation is that you're going to take care of this because you wanted something nice. We bought you something nice. And I said, has it worked? And the answer was it's worked phenomenally well because it's not a cheap shirt. And it is visible, and they actually are proud of the logo that's there because they realize I represent us out in the industry.
You have a story about Matt.
Yeah, this one, and this predated Dr. Stewart at Mississippi State, so he wouldn't know who this is, probably, thank goodness. And this young man I had in class that deals with the second one, his name was Matt. He was one of the best students that I had in the program at Starkville at that time, phenomenal grades, just the sharpest guy that I had dealt with as a student. And Matt was the first young man that I ever saw with a man bun, okay? Because I'm like, what is that little dude back on your head back here, Matt? And he's like, that's what they call a man bun, Dr. Goatley. And I was like, I've never had enough hair to have one of those, okay? He also wore rings in various parts of the body. And again, I hadn't seen a lot of that in Starkville, Mississippi either. So Matt was a free spirit, but immensely qualified as a Turfgrass manager. But Matt kept coming back from the interviews about, sorry, we didn't hire you. So guess what Dr. Goatley and Matt did? Yeah, well, we had a little sit down, heart to heart, which is a very difficult talk to do because who am I to judge how this person, his appearance, what he thinks. But I said, you want me to give you some honest critique? And he said, please do. And I said, you got to cut the hair and take the rings out. Okay. Now, his response to me was,
that's not fair.
It's not fair. And my response was, life isn't fair. And I'm like, do you want this job? Because you are the best qualified candidate for the job. But when you show up, okay, as you are, and that's why I say be yourself, but don't let yourself get in the way. Dr. Brill. He would have, that's right, he would have fit in quite well. I wonder where he's at these days. It would surprise me if he's not out there. He's probably growing another type of grass quite successfully. Yeah, making a lot more money if I had to guess. Okay?
Were they acceptable? If they had them, they need to cover them up around members, especially at some of the more conservative clubs. It was a very interesting whole discussion about tattoos and where people came down on, which is another whole thing.
Yeah. And it's another one of those, is that fair? And I don't think it is, but who's paying the bills is the one that gets to say that it's fair. She pointed out to me on local television there in the Roanoke market, the young lady with a sleeve, her tattooed sleeve, and on television she wears long sleeve shirts.
Yeah. Never saw it until they did a clip on something else.
She's in a commercial for a pistol range, and she's up there firing the gun, and in the pistol range, you see all of that. Because I didn't realize it was her. And Lisa goes, that's the girl from the midday program. To do this. So on television, she's covered, and at the firing range, she's like, watch out. Okay, I'm here for you. And so again, that struck me as interesting. So Matt was immensely qualified. Matt cut his hair, took the rings out, got the job, and he said, now what do I do? And I said, to be determined. Okay. And I said, you're going to have to take your time to see how would that fit in. If you really are wanting to go that direction, maybe you go that direction. However, I said, don't get the job. The next day show up with the rings back in. I'm like, ease back into this. Again, here I am. This isn't what I do. Okay. I should have talked to her about this. I'm trying to give a young man advice but I said, I know this will get you the job. You are qualified. You're more than qualified to do this. And it's not fair, but.
Right. And I'm over here thinking, I spend every day trying to teach people to be true to themselves and to know themselves and allow the world to know them and who they really are, right? So, I have a little different thought about that. But in the real world, maybe there's something to that. We're not here to say like this is the way to do it and there's only one way to do it, but, something to think about and something to, just sort of help you, have that debate in your head or, how do you present that to, if you have a work crew and, you have some issues there with how people are showing up, how do you address that? What do you want to do? I worked for a corporation. It was a private hospital system for a while. And, we had, there was definitely a dress code all the way down to how long your fingernails could be. And what types of earrings you could wear. Some of them were safety issues. It was an inpatient psychiatric unit. And so, there were certain things like I never would have been able to wear this. Why? Somebody could choke me with it on the inpatient unit, right? So we definitely had different, different types of dress codes. And some of them were for safety issues like that. And some of them were just, it was the Baptist hospital system. Right. And so your skirts couldn't be very, your skirts had to be a certain length and, that was just their value system as well.
So, and our son recently went through, his first real serious semester of internship with a financial firm. He's a double business major at Tech, graduating this May. He was at a firm in Charlotte, for the summer. And when he showed up, he had a beard and they didn't come out and just tell him, you will shave that beard, but guess what they told him?
You will shave that beard.
Shave that beard.
Yeah. Yeah. So on day 2, guess what he showed up in?
Yeah.
Full suit, and he couldn't wear suit separates either. It's not like he could wear like pants or like full suit, no facial hair. So he spent the summer shaving and wearing a suit. And when they offered him a phenomenal job at the end of the summer, guess what he said? No, thank you. Yeah. Because that's not him, and that's not how he wants to live. So then guess what his parents said?
Yeah, are you crazy? Yes.
You realize in May we're cutting you off, right? So keep that in mind.
So let's talk about integrity, okay? Be honest. This is a no-brainer, and it's always appropriate that honesty is the best policy. But I added this in here, and this comes from my perspective, then she could try to clean this up because I'm telling you one thing and then saying be careful. You've got to remember that being honest does not always require you to tell everybody everything.
So you want to be honest, but you don't want to hurt someone's feelings under the guise of honesty, right? So like with Matt, you gave him accurate feedback. You said, Matt, I think one of the barriers to your employment is your appearance. I think people are having a hard time getting past that. They make certain assumptions about you, and they're having a hard time getting past your appearance to be able to recognize that you're very well qualified, right? That type of feedback was honest, right? But it feels better than, Matt, you look like I'm trying not to use too many pejorative words here because we're being recorded.
I don't know what pejorative means.
Matt, you look like a pothead, or something like that. Like, you don't want to say that because that's different. That's being unkind, or that's being cruel. So you don't have to hurt someone's feelings in order to be honest.
So the example I used in Wednesdays, I was told, don't use this example again. But
so here he goes, right?
So I have another angle to take it. And this is, it's going to be equally disgruntling to you, but it's another angle to take, because I'm not going to touch on the one we used Wednesday. But I would think if somebody made a comment about Lisa's cooking, and they come in and they say, is this homemade? And she says, yes. And then they go, I thought so. How did you interpret the way I said that?
Not so good, right? And maybe you need to say it bolder, like, oh, I thought so.
Well, I was trying not to
Did Lisa make this? Yes. Oh, I could tell.
Yeah. So all in how that part is delivered in terms of how that's said, because that was kind of a downer to get this. Again, that's probably a little more honesty than someone would want. And it's something it does. It's a little zinger. And, this happens all the time, and I'm guilty of it. We've got some friends that are guilty of it. We've got some friends that are honest to a fault in terms of doing this, and we will actually have a little bit of a chuckle sometimes about that. Well, I'm getting the eyebrow, so I better move along here. Okay. It wasn't an eye roll, was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Eye rolls are not allowed in marriages. So I was watching to make sure. All right. That means move along. We will.
I'm going to take the clicker from him in a minute. So
I offered, and she said, it's your talk. And I was like, here we go. Exude confidence. You need to express an air of confidence in pretty much everything you do. Now, Lisa just talked about fake it to make it. That can't go on forever, right? It might in terms of interactions on bad days, but in terms of your expertise, can you fake it to make it forever? No. So far, so good. Right there with you, James. Long time. But you've got to send the right signals to your peers, your supervisors, and your clientele. And if they think they're working with an expert, okay, they feel much better about that in terms of, again, how you are perceived. So be very positive, very upbeat with them. Again, exude confidence, and don't back away from the challenges. When any of my former students complained about, have you seen the latest regulatory stuff they're doing? And I'm like, congratulations. What an opportunity for you to get us over this hurdle. That's also a fine line, because some people, you assume confidence, they take that as you're going the other direction and love what everybody else is doing. So there is a fine line there. You've got to walk. Well, I agree. Doing that. So be confident, but not to the point that you're. It's confident, but not arrogant, not overbearing.
Yeah, I think that's the point we wanted to make. Like, there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. What was that? Yeah, don't be a know-it-all, right? And I also say you can be confident and still not know all the answers, right? So when somebody asks you a question, rather than faking your way through it and pretending you know the answer, and they know that you don't really know and that you're just saying stuff, it is okay to say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that, but I will find out for you. Right? And you can say that confidently. Or, you know what, I don't know the answer to that one, but I know who does, and I will get back with you on that. Or let me research that so that we can tailor a plan that's just right for you, and I will get back with you on that. And you can say that confident. You can say, I don't know, confidently. It happens to me all the time in the therapy room. I'm not an expert on absolutely everything. People will ask me questions, and I'll tell them, people love to ask me legal questions. Of course, I see a lot of people going through divorces and child custody cases and things like that. And so they'll want to ask me legal questions. And I say to them, you know what, that's not my area of expertise. I can't answer that for you. And I think they appreciate that more than me, like, trying to, like, give an answer that is what I think they want to hear, but it's not really the right, I tell them, I don't know the answer to that. You need legal advice, and I'm not a lawyer. Get back to them. Yes. Don't not get back to them. If you say you're going to get back to them, get back to them. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think you have reached a very positive point when you are comfortable saying, I don't know. And I know as younger folks, that is probably the most difficult thing. Any of the academics in here know in terms of when you're doing graduate student defenses, you want students to have answers, but quite often the most uncomfortable times is when they're faking it. And it's like, if you don't know, you don't know. And as academics, we love to watch them just dig that hole deeper and deeper as they go into the pit of despair. Okay. And there's a lot to be said for just being able to say, I don't know. You can't use that answer every time. So to me, as Lisa said, it strikes me, if you're not afraid to say, I don't know, but that's not always your answer, I think that's a very mature response.
Right. But follow, like, I don't know, but I'll find out. Or, I don't know, but here's where I suggest you go. Like with me, I don't know, you need an attorney.
I also find that if you're a professional or you're working on your professionalism, that means you aren't afraid to challenge a different opinion. And the key will come back to it, but you've got to be able to challenge these different opinions respectfully, because this is how everyone is going to grow in terms of how we do something. And think about how many different areas this applies to life. It's not just, well, how do you grow grass? How do you mow grass? How do you paint grass? How do you treat grass? Lots of things here that have challenging. And it's probably one of the most disappointing things now. What's going on in the country is, like, we've got these opinions and nobody wants to talk. They just want to break each other down. Don't be afraid of challenging, but challenge respectfully. And accompanying this, and it took me a while to really get comfortable with this, and now I'm like, why did I wait so long? But we're talking about some people telling us that great people are not getting hired because the committee views these people that are interviewing as being smarter than they are. And I'm like, why wouldn't you want to surround yourself with people like that? If you are qualified for your position, you shouldn't have anything to be afraid of. And I can understand that, because it worried me in my career about, I don't have all the answers. I'm supposed to have all the answers. It took me a long time to figure that out. I am surrounded by the best and brightest now that I have to offer. And I've got Whitney Askew as my Turfgrass program manager that keeps me straight in terms of all my data and how the office is run, a Turfgrass Research Center manager, and John Dickerson that makes me look good by doing this. And they have got skills that I do not have and am never going to have. And I'm like, that's great. You do it. Okay. Make me look good. I'm going to do my best to make you look good.
So I want to back up just a second to, challenging, having a difference of opinion. You always want to do that in a respectful way, right? You don't want to do it in a demeaning way. You always want to do it in a respectful way. Always take the high road. We rarely regret later when we take the high road. I know the low road feels so good in the moment. When, we get that thing in there, it feels good in the moment. We usually end up rethinking it and regretting it. So always try to remember to take the high road. There's a reason we call it the high road. It is the harder path. But the view from up there is often so good, right? So try to take the high road in a difference of opinion. Even if the other person takes the low road, that doesn't give you permission to take the high, to also take the low road. Still take the high road in a difference of opinion, and that maintains your professional respect, respect for yourself and respect for others that you want to always practice as a professional.
And is there anything about that that's easy?
It's really hard.
No.
It's hard to take the high road, especially when someone else is taking the low road and they're going there. You want to go there too. But we usually regret that later on, right? How many of us have ever, someone sent us an email, kind of an angry email, and we're like, oh yeah? Well, okay, here's my response to that. Send. There. Right? Feels so good. Aha. What happens the next morning when you look at that email again? You're like, maybe I shouldn't have said some of those things. Like, can I get that back? And I say that too, right? Like, if you want to type it out, go ahead, type it out, and hit draft. I'm putting it in the draft folder, and I'm going to leave it there, because if you do that, you'll come back to those and go like, yeah, that's not what I want to send. That is not what I want to send. Don't say things, if you can, don't say things and don't send emails when you're angry. Wait until it settles down. What happens is we've got two different parts of our brain. We've got a more primitive part of our brain back here, controlled by the amygdala, and then we have the frontal cortex, which is what makes us uniquely human. So when we're angry, when we feel threatened, when we're frustrated and annoyed, particularly when we're angry, the more primitive part of the brain takes over and it triggers the fight or flight response. And so when we get into that fight mode, we're like, oh yeah, I'm sending this back. Wait, because in time, your frontal cortex gets back in control and you're thinking a little bit better. And that's when you can make better decisions about, is that what I really want to say? Is that the message that I really want to send? Right? In the moment when you send an ugly email right back, your amygdala is very satisfied. But later on, your frontal cortex will regret it. So wait until you're thinking a little bit better and can have a more measured response.
Right. Lisa, if you
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that. Like, be careful, yes, how you interpret things. These days, with so much electronic communication being by email, text message, those types of written things, we have to infer tone, right? So we're going to talk about that in a second. But yes, reread it and see, like, is that what it really said? Am I responding to what they were really saying?
So would you like to share with this group, what is your New Year's resolution?
Oh, I could. This is new. So my New Year's resolution. So I tend to be a little bit of a reactor. I don't know why.
No, you would have never guessed that.
In the therapy room, people can tell me like really horrible things, and it's okay. I guess maybe it's like the safe space. It's okay. In my personal life, I'm like, what? What do you mean? What? So, or like, what? How dare you cut me off? So my New Year's resolution is to extend more grace out into the world on everything.
See, personally, I think that's a bunch of crap, but that's her deal.
But he's benefiting from it, right?
Yes, I'm really benefiting from it. But
so why was your point in asking me?
Well, here's where I'm going with
okay. All right, it's got a point.
It's another little story. This is November, and we're heading down to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina to speak at another conference. And
this is not my proudest moment.
Lisa she has a great idea with our church about a fundraising activity for some really poor people in Haiti that she just assumes, and it is, and it turned out to be, it was a slam dunk as a service project. And the committee at church that approves these things has come back and said, we kind of think Haiti has got enough this year. So let's work on other projects. Oh, Mrs. Goatley was not happy with that answer.
Well, I don't like being told no, right? It's an awesome idea. We should do it.
Yes, so we were driving down, and she has a computer, and she is composing her response to said church committee that has declined her request to host this service project. And it's like, ooh, this is good. And it basically is going like, you all don't know what you're doing. You're ruining our church. I hope you all go straight to hell. Okay? And she signed it off very professionally with love and the peace of Christ, Lisa. And I was like, probably don't need that answer. Now, the best part about it was...
It felt really good in the moment, right?
She was very fired up about this.
Thank goodness we had no internet connection at that
No
point
internet
in time.
connection, because we were talking, yes, they need to hear this. They need to hear the truth. It will help them do this. And we keep going down the road, and then we add a little bit more, and it's like, that's a little harsh. We're going to back away from this, do this. And finally, we just said, and she kind of got to that point where, I don't think we should send this thing. And we probably spent a good hour and a half, 2 hours driving down I-77, though. She vented. She needed to vent. She needed to get that out. But fortunately, no internet connection. And the message never was sent. And she ended up getting to host her project and do a wonderful fundraiser for these people as it was. But I was right there with her, because I'd never heard such foolishness in my life either. But fortunately, we didn't have internet to send that thing out, because it would have been bad.
Are you all still trying to figure out how this connects to my New Year's resolution? Me too.
Oh, I have no idea. I just want to tell that story.
how does this connect to my New Year's resolution, right? Maybe it's that.
Oh yeah, you didn't put out any empathy.
I'm just going to extend more grace to them too.
Yeah.
Like,
yes, it was non-empathetic. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was in November.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, communication. The best sports turf managers that I know, many of them would argue that they aren't, but they're also some of the most effective communicators, and it's not always by word of mouth. Quite often it is. But many times it is through their actions as a leader. But it no doubt matters. And communication is very difficult to do this. I still, even up here to put on it, again, fake it to make it. It's like, for me, it's difficult to speak to groups because this does not come easy to me. Most people are like, you're kidding. I was like, it does not come easy to me, but I've got to where I like to do it because I practice enough. This is another thing that you've got to get good at and you've got to practice on. And Lisa pointed out to me this one because I don't think about this, even though in extension I do answer the phone, but she puts in here about that it matters, and think about how you would respond to a person in person, but over the phone.
Yeah, so I usually say, have a smile on your face. Have a smile on your face when you're answering the phone, and a smile will be in your voice, right? We've all been the person on the other end of the line when somebody answers, and you can tell, like, you know, maybe it's not such a good time. I mean, I've had people answer the phone, and I'm like, is this a good time? You know, 'cause they're like, hello. It's like, is this a good time? I can call you back. You know, so keep in mind that sometimes people's first interaction with you is on the phone. And so you want to always, you know, have a professional demeanor on the phone as well. Don't forget about that. Very often we're in a rush. If it's not a convenient time to answer the phone, don't answer the phone. You know, that's okay. But, you know, try to have a smile in your voice and a smile on your face when you're answering the phone, and a smile will be in your voice. Don't rush your callers. Sometimes people are telling their thing and you already know the answer, right? Like, you know, like, okay, here's how we're going to solve this, right? And we want to interrupt them and say, like, oh yeah, we got that covered. You know what? Okay, you know what? Here's what we're gonna do. Like, we want to solve the problem and, you know, give them that answer. But as human beings, we all like to feel heard, right? So sometimes they need to just tell you their whole story. Even though, like, a third of the way in, you already know the answer, you know what the solution is, you know what needs to be done. Let them just tell their whole story. Don't rush them. Just listen. One of the mistakes that we often make as human beings is when we think we're communicating well, we're not. Because a huge part of communication is listening. And the mistake that we make a lot is, rather than listening, when someone else is talking, rather than listening, what are we really doing? We're thinking about our response, right? We're just waiting for them to pause so that we can give them our response. But rather than really listening to them, what we're doing is composing our own response, like, yeah, hurry up so I can tell you what I want to tell you. You know, we're not really listening to what they're saying. We're composing our own response in our head. We're rehearsing our own response. We're just waiting for a pause to give it to them. So try to think about that, like, how can I listen and, you know, allow people to feel heard, get out their whole story, tell me what they want to tell, and then I can respond.
You're absolutely killing one of my future slides here by jumping ahead of the game.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, so here is a tie together a couple of points moment here. We've got communication on the phone. We've talked about service, and we've talked about honesty. So we just went through this situation recently, which will tie them all together. Our daughter's 25th birthday was January 11th. So
Wait, no.
No?
It comes later. It comes later. That's a later slide.
Well, you were jumping ahead. I was going to go early too.
Oh, okay, sorry. No, that's a later slide. Hit the pause button. That's a later slide. It's a later slide.
You can do it and I can't do it. This is a jip. Successful communication is a two-way street. I think she was talking about that, right? That's where I say she kept jumping ahead here. And then we have the listing part which is coming up. This one is pure Goatley here that dreamed this up. Communicate to manipulate. And she said, of course, because she interprets manipulate as being devious. Okay? I don't interpret manipulate meaning necessarily being devious. To me, it's like you want to tell somebody the way to do something and you need to do it in a positive manner. But again, life is about manipulation, correct? Your job, if you're managing turfgrass, is you're manipulating the heck out of that grass to make it do what you want it to do. But we want to do this in a positive way. And one of the most important messages I will never forget, it was Jim Harris, golf superintendent, Chickasaw Country Club in Memphis area, came down to speak to our students at Mississippi State one time, and he's like, ladies and gentlemen, I expect all of you to be able to know how to grow grass. He goes, but it all comes down to this. He goes, you will be successful if you can tell somebody to go to hell in a way that they'll enjoy the trip. And I was sitting there, I wrote that down as that is absolute truth. Okay, maybe it could be expressed better, but the message stuck with me. It stuck with those kids to this day. It's like he was so right to what you do. So communicate to make things happen the way you need them to happen, but do it in a way that certainly builds a person up rather than turning them down.
So I usually say, so I had trouble with this slide too. I was like, maybe we should take out the word manipulate. You know, he wanted to leave it in. And I said, okay, let me see how I can get behind this. So I can get behind this by saying it this way. Your behavior can get you the outcome that you want. How you handle something can get you the outcome that you want. You have to be in control of you. We are not in control of the other person. But if I'm in control of me and I think about it, my behavior and my response can get me the outcome that I want. It can also get me an outcome that I don't want. And this is where Ron, I said we're going to talk about this later, like the tone of voice thing, right? Think about your tone of voice and how important that is, right? Where it's like in these written communications, in emails and in text messages and things like that, it's so easy to misinterpret. Because if we say something in a different tone of voice, it means something completely differently, right? Right now, there's this State Farm commercial that's out there. And I don't know if you all have seen it, but it's like a split screen. So we see one segment of shots that are like a father and a teenage daughter. And the car, so you've seen it, yeah. So the daughter comes out, and there was like this bow on this car, and she comes out and goes, "What? Is this my car?" And then we go to another screen. It's a guy who walks out into an alley, and his car has been vandalized, and he says, "What? Is this my car?" And then we go back to the daughter, and she was like, "I can't believe this." And we go back to him, and he's like, "I can't believe this." Right? Same exact words. It means something completely different because it's said in a different tone of voice, right? And so sometimes we're not aware of the tone of voice. You know, I was talking with a gentleman last night. So there was a rep that took the Virginia Tech students out to dinner last night. It was really kind and generous of him to do that. They're like here for the first time, and you know, anyway. So we went along, and this rep was talking with me about when he found out what I did. He was like, "So I have to talk with you about something." And I told him, "I'm off the clock." And that didn't matter. He's got 2 adult daughters who are having a conflict with one another, and they're both texting him all day long about, you know, each one complaining about the other one. So he's like, what am I supposed to do with that? And I told him his first problem was he's thinking like a man. Right? That's what I told him. Your first problem is you're thinking like a man and you're dealing with 2 women, right? So anyway, but after he talked more and, you know, I gave him some suggestions that he rejected, and I gave him more really good suggestions that he also rejected. I said to him at the end, you know, so we got, you know, I said like, maybe try this and say these things to them. And then I said to him, you're going to have to be really careful about one thing. And I paused because I wanted him to listen really well. So you're going to have to be really careful about one thing. And I said, your tone of voice. Because he's used to being a man in charge. And so even when he was telling me about this situation, it was all like barking orders. And this is how he was saying it. Everything. And even when he was telling me the story, he was saying it like this. And so I said to him, if you want them to hear your message, you're going to have to be careful about your tone of voice. You're going to have to be more careful about your tone of voice than your word choice. Right? So we have to be careful about our tone of voice. If we're frustrated with someone, it's going to come out. Right? So try to like just take a deep breath and say, you know, okay, I can get the outcome I want here depending upon if I'm careful about how I present myself in this situation, right? So we can either escalate a situation or de-escalate a situation with our word choice and our tone of voice. So just think about that. You know, a lot of good communication is, a lot of being really effective at communication is very much conflict management.
And that's what this bullet is about. What What's your audience to do that? It matters to some degree today. You all let me get away with wearing this because you didn't have any say so anyway. But I felt comfortable enough I could talk to you, but there'd be other groups that's like, no, I wouldn't do that. Just what she's saying here. Is there anything worse than being berated in front of somebody else? If a boss does that to you. And you've got to think if you're in charge, as much as you want to say that, it's like there's a time and place for that, but it's not in front of others to do that, even though that can really feel good. And just what she said about that tone, it can be interpreted so many different ways, but be very careful as you're going through in terms of how this comes across. I tell all the Turfgrass people I work with, again, we're not understood as an industry, so we've got a lot of education to do. And again, I think that's an opportunity. And I tell my students to use as many big words as you possibly can at the right moment.
And appropriate terminology rather than shortcuts.
Yeah, but if you are applying chemistry that has a fancy name, you don't just have to call it fertilizer, right? If you know it's isobutyraldehyde diurea and you have the chance to work that into conversation, you need to say that, okay? And if you really want to blow them away, don't talk in pounds per thousand, go something like grams per hectare or something like this. They have no idea what you're talking about. They are baffled, and they're like, wow, leave them alone. Let them do their job. Look what they're doing. They're talking about isobutyraldehyde diureas, okay? Drives me crazy when somebody's talking in front of people talking about, let's go back down to the shop. Let's go back down to the barn, okay? Is that what you call your maintenance facility? Because if it is, again, it's sending that wrong message. And amongst your friends, you're like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. But when you're out there in front of other groups, again, use the big words. You went to school probably to get those big words. Put them out there. If they want to know more about that, I think that's a good thing. It's like, well, explain to them a little bit about what makes IBDU.
But there's a science to what you do, right? There's science behind this, and you're applying that science. So use that to your advantage to help change how people view this field as a more professional field, because there's a science behind it.
Yeah, in part. And David, I think I was trying to think back from yesterday's PR symposium that Glenn Gray and Tomas did. And they had in there that, because I made a note of it, that public relations is a part of professionalism. And their target for the group that was in there listening, again, if you get a chance with these things being recorded, listen to how they were talking about utilizing social media and everything. But part of it was also just direct communication. And it was like each one of us on behalf of this industry needs to be a PR person, because doing public relations is professionalism. And again, I hadn't thought of it, but I wrote it down. I said, I agree 100%. That wouldn't be one I would have, and I didn't list it, but I think they're spot on with doing that. So I told you it's practice to do this, and I will practice. Well, fortunately, you can't see me. There's a very few select jokes I have. David's heard a few of these things, and I'm not telling him here, but there's a couple of jokes that I've had over the years that are slam, bang, you're going to laugh funny if I don't blow it, okay? So I'm driving down the highway, and guess what I'm doing before a meeting? I'm practicing the stupid joke, because the only way it works is if I get the cadence right, I pause at just the right moment, you can't blow it. And I'm sitting there telling myself this joke 20 minutes out over and over and over again just to be ready, because I get one chance. And if I blow it, they're like, God, I hope he doesn't tell that stupid joke again, okay, to do this. It's practice.
Is it the Cajun one?
It's the Cajun one.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm not going there. See me afterwards. It's a good one. I'll go over and practice a little bit before I tell it to you. Yes, it's a good one. Okay, this is one, we touched on it, and this is a very difficult one for me. And she picked up on this and says, oh, it sounds like something you do. Don't communicate to humiliate or retaliate, okay? My means of getting back at someone is certainly to cut them down, okay? I'd love to chop you off at the legs, put you back in your place to do this, and I will do it more
You would
subtly.
never guess, right? Like those of you who know him, like you'd never guess that, yeah.
No, but I am a master at it, okay? I'd be one of the most devious people in the room that you would never suspect.
Well,
that,
you don't do it, though. That's the fortunate.
Oh, no, I
it's
don't
like
do it.
taking the low road
Fortunately,
in the moment. Like you think about, like, I want to say this.
Yeah, I'm thinking all kinds of negative thoughts, okay, about what I could do to do this. And she's always, be careful, because it doesn't do any good to shame someone.
It mostly happens when your students don't study for tests and then they get a 30 all the time. Like Sam's like, oh, geez. they get a 30, all semester long, and then they come and ask for what they can do for extra credit.
Yeah. What can I do to improve my grade? I was like, no. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
Right. I tell them all the time, you can't shame them. You can't motivate them by shaming them.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful. So if anybody went to, Josh McPherson did a presentation on positive coaching. Anybody, you went to that? Yeah. Josh did a seminar on positive coaching, and he had a slide in there where he addressed this, and he said you can be demanding without being demeaning. And there's that you can have high standards and you can communicate those high standards, so you can be demanding without being demeaning.
Yeah, and that's another great one when these things get posted to pay attention to, because Josh came back to Virginia last year and did it for our VSTMA group, and it's a great message. So the second one here is what she's always cautioning about. So when you get in that urge of you're going to say something that's going to shame someone, pause, slow down, be very careful. We don't have a reset button. Things come out and it's like, oh, I wish I could take that back. It ain't going to happen. We just had one of these situations there at Blacksburg with an administrator. We figure that it was probably wine or some alcoholic beverage involved. It was sent at like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was a link to a website that I know they did not intend to send out to the entire listserv, but it was sent out to the entire listserv. And when it came, we were all like, did you see what I see? Did I read something wrong? Everybody was like, holy cow. So I'm like, And so I'm pretty sure that wasn't intended to happen. And then they did the retract, so-and-so wishes to retract that message. Yeah. Okay. Which just sends
Which only makes everybody want to open it up,
yeah,
right?
It's like,
ho, what was that?
Yeah. So that retract the message thing, the first thing should happen is, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to send that out. Not he wishes to retract the message. That's not going to work. So we don't have that reset recall button in most of these situations.
And it can take a long time to recover professionally from something like that, right? Like one error in a moment, you spend so much time building up your professional reputation, and it can just take one incident like that to, really, make your level of professionalism take a nosedive. So we've all just got to be really careful about that. And I think it's getting harder and harder to do that, right? Because everything is so immediate. Tweeting, right? So we've got Twitter, we've got Instagram, we've got Snapchat, we've got all these things that in the moment, can so help you make a bad decision. It seems like such a good decision at the time, and it's not. So we have to be careful.
Yeah. So that's where, and this is another one that my intent is not to hit home, to be critical. I would just tell you to think about this. I see Twitter in particular, to me, is the one I pay more attention to than I do Facebook, and I don't use Instagram. And my Twitter account my goal is it is job related. To do this. Somebody teased me one time, said, I remember you said something about Kentucky basketball one time. And I was like, I probably did. It slips out. But my goal is not to talk about anything but turf. But when I look at the social media, and I'm, scanning it all the time because I see so many great ideas. But to me, this one is very scary because it is so very powerful. And why I say that, and again, I'm not saying anybody's name in particular, but I see that up there in their byline about the views expressed are solely of me and not my organization. And I asked a friend at the university about if somebody did something that got somebody in trouble, do you think that would cover them? And they just laughed and said, no, you pretty much putting your name out, you're associated with that group. You probably are going to be recognized as part of that association. So,
and as human beings, do we, we don't do that. We don't say like, oh yeah, that's their professional side and that's their personal side. No, it's all together, it's all there together.
Yeah. So this is such a powerful tool. It's such a great way to get information out and to have fun, et cetera. But there's some of the things that I'll show her. It's like, oh, I can't believe they're going there on this account because this is not a topic that is appropriate. If somebody else sees this, who knows where this goes? So I throw it in here as just be careful. If you see any friends that doing this, it's like, hey man, you might want to rethink doing this. If you truly had a separate account, that'd be one thing. But when you are viewed or mine is at VA Turf, and it's like all the people back in Virginia know, well, that's dope doing this. And I'm very careful of what I put on the social media.
Yeah, so be very careful about how you handle social media.
So you've touched much of this, but I'll let you kind of go ahead again to give the two-way street here about listening. And this is one I think you do a better job explaining than I do.
I think I made a mistake and already said it.
That's all right. You have, but go ahead and say it.
Right, that most of the time instead of listening, what we're really doing is composing our response in our head. We've got to get better at being better listeners. I do a lot of marriage counseling in the practice that I'm in. And people always come in when we're identifying, talking about like what brings you in. They always say, we need to work on communication, right? That's what everybody always says. We need to work on communication. And then when they get in there and over time I'm observing their communication dynamics, what I usually find out is they're not good listeners. They're not good listeners. They talk at each other. They're not good listeners. And so I, work on good listening skills, which, people don't think are, they don't want to work on those because they want the other person to understand their perspective, right? Like I want her to understand what I need or what I'm going through, or I want him to understand, what's important to me. And I usually tell them, and sometimes they don't like to hear it, that, what your job is? Your job is not to communicate your message to your spouse. Your job is to hear what your spouse's message is to you, right? And try to set aside your own stuff. But in that moment, your job is to hear what your spouse's issue is with you. And a lot of, conflict resolution, a lot of good conflict resolution. If you have a problem with a customer, you need to be a really good listener. You need to be a really good listener and allow them to say everything that they need to say. They need to feel really heard by you and that you really get it. And in order to do that, you have to be a really good listener, right? Even though you need to say things to them like, I get that, yes. And so your problem was, X. And I see that it was so inconvenient. Yes, tell me more. Okay, tell me more about that. Did you tell me everything? In your head, you might be thinking like, no, stop talking. I don't want to hear any more of what you have to say, right? But what you need to be doing is saying like, tell me more about that so that I have a full understanding of that.
And it really matters as part of the service industry, no doubt. Again, we are servants to do this. When we were going to that conference down in the Carolinas, we did a little program. I had some perspectives on something. Again, it was turf related. She was doing something more related to this. And one of the situations that came up with this company we were talking to was how do we handle a situation where with customer service, we're running late. We promised them we would have this product there by 1:00. We're not going to make it. What do? It's a communication situation. Ms. Goatley, how do we handle that? So what would you all say? What would be your response? My customer is expecting me at 1:00. I'm not going to make it.
I think it was 1:00 on Christmas Eve, too. Yeah.
So what's your answer?
It was like their biggest customer.
How do you handle that? That's your biggest customer. You certainly want to keep these people happy. And real world was, we're running behind. I was supposed to be there at 1:00. It's Christmas Eve. I'm not going to make it. How do you handle that?
There you go. Let them know. Call. Don't just ignore it. Don't ignore the problem and say like, okay, our guys will get there when they get there. Like, call them. And as soon as you know you're not going to make it by 1:00, is what I said. When did you know that you weren't going to get there at 1:00? And I think the answer was 12:30. I'm like, okay, well, guess what you need to do? Call them as soon as you know and say, we're not going to get there by 1:00. Provide an explanation if possible. Here's why. We know we promised this to you, apologize, and we're going ahead of where our slides are, but, communicate with them, make the phone call, let them know, offer solutions, find out what would fix it for them, but address it, don't just ignore it.
Go ahead, David.
They'll call and they may have an issue that you can't really help with. They just want to get it out there, talk to somebody, and usually we can resolve it out there on the phone.
Oh, she does this to me every day. And if we can, we'll try to go for a walk. And those who've been to the balancing deal, that's kind of our time. And she's just going off, okay? And I'm just walking along. Mm-hmm, yeah, okay, sure. She just wants to vent and
if he tries to solve it for me, I'm like, I don't want you to solve it. I just need to say it.
Well, I've got the answer.
I don't want you to solve it. I'll tell him, I don't want you to solve it. I just need to say it. And then there'd be times I'll say something and it's like, I think we've talked about this already. Like, I need to talk about it again. I need to say it again. I just need to, and I agree with you, Dave, like so much of us as human beings, we just want to be heard, right? It's like the universal need. We want to be heard, we want to be noticed, right? It's like a universal need. We want to be heard, whatever it happens to be, we want to be heard, right? So don't rush people in that. Even if it's coming out badly on their part, even if they're taking the low road and not doing it well, if you hear them and if they have the sense that you're really listening and you're really attentive, they'll start to soften. And you can see it happening, right? Like as you're saying, like, I'm so sorry, like tell me more, right? Engage in good attending behavior, right? Like make eye contact, nod, lean in, use good nonverbal behavior as well, right? Don't sit there and go like, right? What does that say to them? I'm not listening. I'm annoyed. I wish you would hurry up and shut up, right? And that escalates the situation for them, right? People just want to be heard. So, a lot of good customer service is listening and it's helping people to feel heard.
And I don't do that, but I do say, could you talk softer because I can't hear the TV? So think before you speak, okay? If you use think, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind about what you're going to say? Again, it's a lot. So we had slow down.
If you use these criteria, guess how much of your initial thing that you're going to say, you actually say? Very few things, yeah. Ron says nothing. If we use those criteria, like if we're thinking something and we're getting ready to say it, if we use those criteria, there are so many times that we just, I'm not saying that. Doesn't meet those criteria. I'm not saying, you think of the next thing. Well, I'm not saying that. It doesn't meet those criteria, right?
Yeah.
And that's good customer service. It's also just a part of being a good human, right? How we participate in humanity with one another if we use these criteria.
So we've touched on this when we were talking about challenging, but let's say now we've taken it full bore to, I think you're wrong. It's not just we've got a difference in opinion, but I'm right, you're wrong. Okay? And how are you going to deal with this? And disagreement should be part of your professionalism, your day-to-day, what you're doing, because obviously these are going to happen. And it might not just simply be a disagreement over how to manage this particular turf situation. This goes into a whole realm of things personally and professionally that you get. But if you do so, you should be able to have a disagreement that is handled very respectfully. Okay? And that's the key is, can we agree to disagree and walk away? And it's like, yes. And you're still my friend. You're still a great colleague or great employee or a great employer. You're a great boss. Again, all this is in place. There shouldn't be any reason that you cannot disagree. You just need to do it the right way.
One of the strategies that I have to teach people in the therapy room all the time is that other people are allowed to have their own opinions and feelings. We don't tolerate that very well, right? Someone disagreeing or feeling something that we don't like or we wish they didn't feel or thinking something that we wish they didn't is really uncomfortable for us. And what we find ourselves wanting to do is argue with them and try to bring them over to our way of seeing things or feeling about something. So, it's a skill that I have to teach people all the time. People are allowed to have their own opinions and feelings. You're allowed to have your own feelings about that, right? And so it's trying to get into that space right there where recognizing that they're allowed to have their own feelings or their own opinions about that. I'm allowed to express mine as well. We're going to do it in a respectful way. We can disagree. We can say, it's not, well, we have differing opinions about that. And you might even say something like that. Well, I think it's evident that we have differing opinions about that. And you can say that in a respectful way.
Yeah, and that's the key, is disagree, but do it respectfully. So this is where we're going to go. Okay.
This is it.
I was trying to think ahead if you're to admit your mistakes. This is easy, right? Exactly. Okay. Exactly.
Isn't there a funny movie clip where somebody can't say I was wrong? They were like, I was they can't say I was wrong. It's hard.
So if you make a mistake, again, the first thing you should do is get on top of it by apologizing promptly. The situation we're talking about with that vendor was you're running late, you call the customer and you apologize and you give them the best correct estimate of when you're going to be there and hope they don't, tell us we don't want your business to do this. But jump on it, because the longer it goes on, the harder it is to say, I'm sorry, correct? We live this, again, personally and professionally. And then on the other side of it, when you have been wronged and somebody apologizes to you, and sometimes to me, this is more difficult than saying I'm sorry, is to then accept the apology and move beyond it. Key words here: resolve conflict as soon as possible. Don't let it fester. It's an important part of professionalism.
Sometimes as human beings, it can be hard, right? Like when we've been wronged, if someone offers us an apology, we might not feel ready, right, to accept that apology and let it go. Try to get there, try to practice getting there quicker, not holding on to grudges. And if you say like, it's okay, really make it okay. If it's not okay, you can say like, well, I accept your apology. It's going to take me a little while to, resolve my feelings about this, or something like that, right? But try to be on that end of it, of practicing the receiving the apology. If you apologize to someone, and they don't accept your apology, be gracious about that, right? So you might say, I apologize. We didn't get that to you on time. And someone might say, I don't want your damn excuses, right? They could say that, right? And you need to accept that graciously. You don't need to say, well, screw you then. That's not, good customer service. That's not where we want to go with that, right? So you need to be gracious about that, even if they're not gracious. So if they say, I don't want your damn excuses, you need to respond to that, be gracious about it, and respond to that again in a professional way. And you want to say, well, I hope that we can get this resolved, to your satisfaction at some point in time. They might just not be ready yet, right? They might not be practicing cleaner thinking like we all are in here, right? And they might think about it later on and go like, yeah, that wasn't a good response. I really should accept his apology. They might come to you later and say, I'm sorry. I was just mad and upset, right? But be gracious about it yourself if they don't accept your apology.
So here is where I was going with this earlier story. She said, hold on. So our daughter just turned 25, and in celebration of her 25th birthday, we got her some earrings. And this was a Monday before her birthday. Her birthday was last Thursday week ago. Monday we went to a local jeweler near Blacksburg, and we picked out a set of rings, and we asked them, is there any way that we can get these shipped out there? Our daughter's in Seattle, and they assured us, absolutely, you'll buy the rings here. We'll overnight them. She'll have them. The boyfriend will pick them up before. She'll be surprised on her birthday. And we're like, this is so fantastic. Exactly what we need to have happen. Guess what didn't happen?
The earrings did not get there.
The earrings did not make it. So I'm not the communication expert in the family. I leave all that to her. She's on the phone, and she's calling Seattle at this jewelry. It's a nationwide jewelry store.
Like, did you get them?
Yes,
Are they there?
Arrived. They got here, and she's told, no, they haven't. And she calls the store back home, and they're like, we do not have the tracking number. We don't understand what happened to it. And immediately.
So here's what I got. Well, here's what I really got. So I called the salesperson who was taking care of it for me, that we made the sale with, and he was going to overnight them. And I said, this was like 2 days later, and I said, those haven't gotten there yet. And she said, well, I sent them. And I was like, I'm not saying you didn't. She was really defensive about it. Well, I sent them. And I was like, yes, I'm just trying to find them. So I'm wondering if I could get the tracking number. And then she says to me, well, I didn't keep the tracking number. And I'm thinking, who doesn't keep the tracking number? I'm like, who doesn't get it? So it's sounding like excuses to me, right? Instead of saying, what she should have said to me is, I'm so sorry. You know what? Let me get on that. I will, look back in our records. I'll look up the tracking number so I can tell you where they are. Give me your phone number, and as soon as I have some information, I'll call you back, right? That's what she should have said to me, right? She didn't. And to be honest, I never dealt with her again after that. After she said, well, I sent them. Well, I didn't keep the tracking number. After that, I dealt with someone in Seattle who was on the receiving end, who gave me great customer service, and she didn't make the sale. When I called her and explained the situation, she said, I'm so sorry. Oh, you must be so disappointed they didn't get here for her birthday. And I was like, yes, we are, right? What was she doing? Yeah, she was communicating with me. I felt heard. I felt understood. In the end, I was apologizing to her. She was like, I'm so sorry. I was like, oh, it's not your fault, right? But she said to me, let me call the originating store. I'll see what I can find out. Give me your phone number and I'll call you back. That woman called me every day. She said, they didn't get here today. I just wanted to let you know, but I'm still on it for you, right? One day she called me, she said, everybody here knows we're looking for that package, right? The woman at the original store who said, I'll find out and call you back, never called me back. How do I feel about that store? Not very good. Am I giving her more business later on? No, I'm not.
Matter of fact, she will go see them eventually, and I'm not going on that ride either. This will happen.
It all happened, right? Like by the time they got here, we were flying out for, it does still feel unresolved to me. I'd like to give them a little feedback about the customer service I experienced at their store.
So how about if you tie it in with this last one here? Be direct. Do not be passive aggressive.
Right. You want to be direct. You don't want to be passive aggressive.
Well, that's what that says.
I feel,
how about you take it more than that?
Thank you. I do feel like the woman at my local store was passive aggressive. She was like, I sent them. I didn't keep the tracking number. She wasn't direct with me. She didn't give me accurate information. I felt like she was backpedaling the whole time. If you have feelings about something, say them and say them directly. Don't go, if we don't give expression to things directly, it comes out sideways.
And for this whole situation, what we figure out has happened, it was sent UPS ground.
Yeah.
Which said it's probably going to take 7 to 10 days.
So she didn't overnight them like she said. Because when they finally arrived, the woman said, we got them. They came UPS ground, which is why it took a week. She said they were not overnighted. So I was like, okay.
And realistically, even if she'd done that on purpose, but had told us that I made a mistake.
Right. If she said, I'm so sorry. They accidentally got sent UPS ground, whether I did it or someone, we accidentally sent them UPS ground. It's going to be a week. We owe you an apology. Whatever. Here's a 20% off coupon for your next purchase or try to do something to make it right rather than just leave it and pretend the problem doesn't exist, right? Don't pretend the problem doesn't exist. Ron. I'm interested. I want to solve it. I want you to feel better. So if you didn't hear, did everybody hear that?
Repeat it because
it was,
for the recording.
One of the most effective customer service responses when you're trying to resolve a problem is to ask the person, what can I do to make this right for you? Right? Because that re-empowers them. When we're in a situation like that, we feel disempowered and we don't feel heard. So it re-empowers them and it helps them to know that you have heard that they are hurt or inconvenienced or that they have feelings about this. So just to say, what can I do to make this right for you?
This is a very troubling situation because I had planned to go to the store and buy her some jewelry, but not now. It's not going to happen.
Right.
Not that store. There's no more stores now.
Yeah. Thank you, Leah. There's more than one jewelry store in Blacksburg. Yeah.
Please. Yeah, thanks for chiming in, Leah. Just be quiet for the rest of the talk. Yeah, that's right. So, we didn't tell her what was coming.
Well, so here's what happened actually. So her birthday was on Thursday and they didn't get there until Monday. But over that weekend, her boyfriend proposed to her. So she was wearing a diamond ring, which, that took that took the attention from everything. So she was just happy. She's also a very grateful child. And so when we told her your birthday present isn't going to get there on Thursday, she said, that's okay. I didn't expect anything. That's okay. Don't worry about it.
We need to move along.
All right. Snap it up then.
Okay. So grow personally and professionally. And most of you have this, and this group is one of these. It's one of the ones we feel most aligned with. We enjoy so much coming here, but what's your core group of folks, your personal and your professional colleagues that for the best and worst times, you share the things that happen. Share your professional accomplishments, even share your professional quote unquote failures or sadness there are times, and expand that network. And again, what a great opportunity that we have every year to get together at STMA to do this.
You don't want to be an island. Don't be an island.
Well, you can't be.
Don't
Can't
be an
be
island.
successful. So leave your job at the office, identify and somehow figure out where are you going to bring in this balance between work and family time, or plain and simple. And this is our other presentation. You won't have any work and or family to do this. And it's very difficult because our jobs are so challenging within the hours that we have to keep. We're expected to keep. And you got to find that time, okay, in your seasons, both at home and at work, that you bring that balance into play.
So I guess I would just say something about that. It's about, we have to be attentive to self-care. If we want to be our best, we can't be at our worst, right? If we want to be our best, we have to take care of ourselves so we can be at our best. And self-care is a part of that. We can't not attend to what our needs are personally and expect to be at our best. So just think about self-care a little bit more.
And we touched on this briefly, but you can't do it all. Again, I figured I was probably close to 37, 38 years old before I really accepted that I couldn't know everything that my colleagues knew. I used to think I was supposed to be a statistical expert. Okay. Leah knows what I'm talking about. Dr. Stewart knows. I gave up. I seek the consultants to do this. I wanted to be an expert in physiology. Shouldn't I know more biochemistry? Yes. And finally, it's like, I can't do it. It happens for me at home. The repair person in the Goatley household is right over there. Okay. And most people are like, well, as the man of the house, does that bother you? It used to. It does not anymore. Okay. She took apart the dishwasher and put it back together. I was watching television. Okay. She's got YouTube over there on my iPad saying, here's how this works. And I'm like, that is so awesome. I could care less. Okay. That used to bother me. It doesn't bother me anymore. Okay.
I did a seminar on stress management on Wednesday. And the one piece I'll add to this is something I say there. No is a complete sentence. Sometimes we have to learn to say no. Even to some good causes, right? Those are the hardest. When it's a good cause or it's a good thing someone's asking, but if you just can't fit it in, if that's not healthy for you, it's okay to say no, and no is a complete sentence.
Yeah, when she said, would you like to learn how to fix the dishwasher? No.
No.
Okay, and we're done. Never stop challenging yourself. So some of you have already done it. Some of you have always said, what is that one thing that I've wanted to do, but that's too crazy. I'm not going to do that. And mine's not too crazy, but 3 or 4 years ago, it's always been a goal of mine to get back a little bit more seriously into music. And I've always played piano by ear, took a couple years worth of lessons when I was 4th and 5th grade. But my son is very musically gifted. And he's like, so why don't you take lessons with the guy that teaches me? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that. And I thought I wanted to learn music theory. And I don't know what the hell they're talking about music theory. So we still get together and we play songs, and he challenges me with chords, and people laugh, say, oh, goes Goatley into his music lesson, piano lessons today.
The 8-year-old is coming out and Mike is going in.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm like,
he's in the waiting room with, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and here he comes. So.
Yeah, but they're not playing Steely Dan, and I'm in there jamming, okay, to do this. For me, that is, I don't care what it looks like. I enjoy it. That's how I spend a lot of my time, with the headphones on or trying to annoy her without the headphones on and the amp cranked as loud as I can possibly get it to do this. That's something for me that was stepping outside my comfort zone and going back to take lessons with somebody that's my age to do this. And again, I used to have been uncomfortable.
And this is another thing in that positive coaching seminar with Josh. He also said, try something new, challenge yourself. Keep challenging yourself to try something new as a professional, whether it's, in your professional life or in your personal life. Keep challenging yourself. So
professionals build teams, and they build relationships very strongly within those teams. And professionals do not shy away from giving credit and promoting anyone around them as best they can. Because if you promote your team members promote you, everybody looks good. And there's a few personalities that doesn't apply to, but in general, this works.
How many of you have ever had a really good idea and someone else took credit for it, like a boss took credit for it? I know, right? Not a good feeling, right? Yeah. People who are real professionals give credit where credit is due. If it's not your idea, don't take credit for it, right? Say, hey, you know what? Nick, our guy, had a great idea, right? That doesn't diminish you at all as a professional. It actually helps build your team.
And professionals, don't hesitate to give back. There's lots of ways that you can give back. Simple or very involved. Financially or through your time. Your time quite often more valuable than money. Advice that you have, constructive, or just by simply listening.
It's a common dynamic in most fields, like in mine as well, like in the recovery field, in the mental health field. One of the ways that we continue to grow as people is to reach back and help others. So like if you're in AA, you come in need and someone is your sponsor, at some point in time, you're expected to give back and you become someone else's sponsor. So it's in the giving back that we somehow also grow, right? But that dynamic exists.
And the best professionals, many of them who I've met through STMA, don't hesitate to say and give thanks. And in person is certainly awesome. You have the opportunity to do that. But if not in person, then a note, a letter, or a card. And for how many of you all would define yourselves as millennials in here? Don't be ashamed. Yeah. Now, some of you might say this is the way I do it, but our children are millennials, and they feel like there's nothing more archaic than to send a thank you card.
No, they do it.
Only because you are chewing on them all day long.
Right. They've been trained, right? Like I said to my children, your grandparents expect a thank you card for the money they sent you on your birthday, right? And so they'll write them. They'll write them now. Although their grandparents are now texting. So before, when their grandparents weren't texting, it was, they didn't do that. But there's something significant about having that, like a note of thanks or something, right? Like you can reread it. It's there with you. You can use it, and it just helps. I'm sorry, I'm say more about that then.
No, that's okay. You're doing quite well. Bottom line is, for those of you that are millennials, if your bosses are my generation, what are we, Dave? Jen?
Archaic,
Yes.
dinosaurs. I don't know what they call you.
Historic, yes. Whatever we are, Jen, baby boomers. Exactly. Yeah. This is the type of stuff we like, what we see, and if that's your boss, then keep that in mind as a way of doing this. I stuck this in, and this is one of these things when I'm having a crappy day.
That's a picture of a bulletin board in his office.
Yes, in a messy office. There are 3 things up here that I look to, and I had one of these last week trying to do annual evaluation, and I just looked over there and said, I'm not that bad of a person, okay? And 2 of these messages right here, my shiner's at work, and I don't see it doing it. The right side there are handwritten notes from Mike Andreessen, okay? Just, Dr. Goatley, you're so wonderful. I'm glad that you're my friend. Will you continue to be my friend? I love you. Okay.
That's not what they really say.
They don't really say that, but they're the most awesome, just little inspiring messages. And the one on the left, the letter, as Leah and Dr. Stewart knows, is from Coleman Ward, thanking me for giving him some information that he was just like, you are the greatest teacher, Turfgrass researcher in the history, and it is my honor to use, and again, total BS. But I'm like, the fact that Dr. Ward took time to send that to me is, again, that's when I look over there and say, it's not such a bad day. You even got that nice thing. When we did this, so let's pass these things out before we lose track.
So Mike always likes to have a little take home. So he brought some thank you notes if anybody feels inspired. Because what's important about this is having a spirit of gratitude, right? We can get into a space where we feel frustrated, annoyed, angry at the world, whatever. A much better space to be is to cultivate a spirit of gratitude. So what we want to do is be in that space where we feel grateful and we give expression of our gratitude to the people for whom that's important, right?
No, the note is not to come.
Right. Direct it to him. So, so I'll address all cards to Mike Goatley.
No, we've already seen people send us from Wednesdays. Mike Hebrard sent us an image of one he's already written.
He said, here's what I wrote to my person.
Here's somebody that means a lot to me. And he goes, I just don't think to say this. And this is one of those.
We think it all the time, right? Like we think things all the time. We think positive things toward people and we don't put it out there into the world, right? So. we want to try to do that. We want to, if you feel
Two
gratitude
totally
for
separate ones
something,
up there, not separate.
give expression to that. Tell that person. I myself have a little file. I've been doing it for years. I have a file whenever anybody writes me a note about one of the best cards I've ever received was a woman who had grown up from the time she was about 12 to the time she was about 17. Her brother-in-law started raping her. And he raped her 4 or 5 times a week for years. And so she came into therapy, and, we worked in therapy. We worked on a lot of stuff. And toward the end of her work, it was around Christmas time, she wrote me a Christmas card. And in that card, she detailed all the things she learned. She said, here are the things I've learned in life. And she detailed all of them. And it was the best card I've ever received on how her life was different after having worked with me in therapy. And I keep that. And on a bad day, when I wonder, like when I have 6 couples in a row who are just bickering at each other, and I'm wondering like, oh, am I ever getting it? Is this really working? Does anybody ever really get anything out of this? I can go back and read that card, and it fills me again, right? When I'm depleted, it fills me again.
Yeah.
I just had a client who came in at the new year, and she said, here's my list of 10 commandments I'm going to live by this year. And they were all points that we had talked about in therapy, right? Stay in your own lane. Everyone's allowed to have their own feelings. The antidote to anger is empathy. These are all things that I've spent a year and a half working with her on, and she listed them all, and she said, this is what I'm going to live by this year.
Yeah. So think what a difference something this simple can do. What's a stamp cost these days?
44 cents?
No, it's long past 44 cents.
Oh, okay.
But it's 50 cents or better. It's in that neighborhood.
Is it really?
Yeah. She just buys forever stamps and goes. And
I do just buy forever stamps.
Think of what a difference you can make in telling somebody thanks, somebody you haven't heard of, thought of for a while, and how surprised and happy they will be to see that. And that's just another step in terms of becoming a professional. So we thank you for spending Friday afternoon with us. You took a risk